Welcome back into Sports Memo's Betting Podcast, college football every game on the board podcast with Mid-Major Matt, our second guest up. Mid-Major Matt, welcome into the pod. How are you?
Doing well, Drew. Everything's going well. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. We got a good segment here. We got some mid-majors on it, right up your alley. Starting off, not really mid-major, I guess AAC, the most underrated conference, in my opinion anyway. Houston at UConn. We got the Cougars laying 22.5 on the road, 57.5 the total in stores.
This feels like a name-your-score type of game because we know how bad UConn is. I mean, they're just not competing with anybody. But the problem is for Houston, we don't know what Clayton Tune's status is going to be. Obviously, they don't have De'Ara King because he's going to redshirt and play next year. Clayton Tune came in, ran the offense well the first game against North Texas, and he's done well this year at quarterback, but he's dealing with a hamstring injury. So we'll see this, watch this as it goes along for the week. UConn is 10-20 against the spread their last 30 games. They are 3-4 against the spread at home as an underdog of 2 touchdowns or more, which is crazy to think that the last 3 years, 7 times they've been an underdog of 14 points or more, and they've only covered 3 times. I mean, this feels like a name-your-score type of thing, but watch out for Clayton Tune's status as the week goes along.
Yeah, always tough to lay more than 3 touchdowns and possibly have your third-string quarterback in there. Gets a little tricky on the road. We got Florida State at Wake Forest up next. Demon Deacons laying 1.5 or 2 at home, 69 the total here.
Yeah, once again, quarterback issues. We don't know who's starting for Wake Forest. If it's Jamie Newman, I feel very confident about Wake Forest. Their offense did really well. Granted, last week they allowed 62 points. On the Florida State side, we don't know who's starting between Alex Hornibrook and James Blackman. Last week they were 17-35 for 150 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. I don't know who should be the starter. I feel like Hornibrook has played a little bit better at times this season, but maybe they have more faith in Blackman's style. You really can't play this game until we get the quarterback situation down because it makes that much of a difference. You know, Newman's been really good in this offense. I believe Hartman is their backup quarterback. I don't know if he can run the offense as good. So if the Wake Forest starter doesn't play, and then maybe you lean to Wake Forest, but then who's starting for? So it's like, you know, there's all sorts of machinations here, and you know, we're taping this and still don't know who's going to be under center for both teams.
He's Mid-Major Matt on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. We got Coastal Carolina at Georgia Southern in the Sun Belt Conference here. 45 being the total. Chanticleer's going on the road. They're catching 6.5 in Statesboro here, Matt. You interested in getting involved in the Fun Belt?
Yeah, I definitely am. I love this Sun Belt. I had to watch the whole Georgia Southern game a couple weeks ago when they played South Alabama. I had the over in the game. It went to double overtime, and somehow they only scored 3 points combined. So unfortunately, the double overtime over didn't help me. Georgia State's had 16 days off, but reading a lot of the press clippings, it hasn't helped them in some areas. Their senior center, Jacob Cooper, still not playing because of the concussion. Logan Wright is out 4 to 6 weeks, who is their running back. They hope to have their all-conference cornerback, but he may not be 100%. Coastal gave up a boatload of rushing yards last week, but I think I like the Chanticleers a little bit on the road. You know, it's kind of hovering around that key number, as you said. I watched that Georgia Southern game. They run the triple option, but they actually don't run it very well. And then when they do pass it, it doesn't go past 5 or 7 yards. So they're not running it very well. They may tailor some things a little different during this break off, but so far I have not been impressed with Georgia Southern this year.
So Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, struggling to stop the run, having to go up against the triple option. You still like the underdog here?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I got to dig into it a little bit more, but when you look at it, the triple option, you got to run it well. You know, we've seen all those times when Navy didn't run it well, and the offense hasn't looked that great. And, you know, Coastal's got an offense that can put up some points. So if this game gets into a little bit of a shootout, you know, Fred Payton is a decent quarterback, and I really think that Coastal can hang in there if this thing, you know, gets into a shootout. Plus, if this thing gets to 7, which I don't think it will, that'll be even more intriguing to me as it hangs around that key number.
All right, Matt. Well, we'll move from the Chanticleers to the Chippewas, talking about Central Michigan at Bowling Green in the some action here. We got 11.5 laying doubles on the road. That's CMU. 53 the total.
Yeah, CMU, you've got a Bowling Green team with the result of the weekend last weekend in terms of the MAC. They go into Toledo. They win the game outright 20-7. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact they scored 20 points or the fact that they held Toledo to 7. It's probably that, because Bowling Green had given up 52 and 62, 30, over 30, and then 52 their last 4 games. I think Toledo just didn't take them very seriously. The one thing I did notice was Grant Loy has been bringing a mobility to the quarterback position that they just haven't had with Darius Wade. CMU's number 1 against the run. The Falcons have 17 sacks this year. They had 15 all last year and 2 years ago. So they're starting to get to the quarterback here. But you have to wonder, what's the hangover effect potentially after winning their huge rivalry game against Toledo? I'm not laying this many points with Central Michigan, but I'm certainly not buying into Bowling Green all of a sudden being really good because of one win over Toledo.
Matt, we got ECU versus UCF up next in the AAC. That's East Carolina at Central Florida, with UCF laying 33 in the bounce house, 62.5 the total in Orlando.
Another one of these name your score type of situations. This is probably a first half play, maybe. UCF coming off the bye week. They're going to be angry after losing to Cincinnati. They've got a road game against Temple coming up, a bigger game in conference and certainly in the division. They're both AAC rivals. So maybe you don't get a focus. A couple weeks ago, I took UCF against UConn because in a similar situation, I thought, okay, UCF's just that much better than UConn. They beat them up in the first half, and then in the second half, they give up all those touchdowns. UConn comes back to cover. I may not make that mistake once again. I may look to UCF in the first half, let them get out to a big lead. ECU is off a bye week too, but I don't know how much that's going to help. I think their future's really bright with Mike Houston, but this could be a quick get out to like a 24-0 lead early on, and then kind of sit the starters as they get ready for Temple next week.
All right, mid-major, Matt. Matt, you're 14-6 this year in games, including an FCS team, correct?
Yes, 14-6, whether it's an FCS game or an FCS FBS games. Now, there's not as many FBS FCS games as there had been in the beginning. Plus, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Drew, we have the eyes of all of Vegas on us. The odds makers, once again, for like the third time this year, have messed up. They put Liberty versus Maine, which is a game of an FBS versus an FCS, into the FCS area and gave it an FCS code. And so there's potentially a play that's there, but it's in the FCS section, so it's not going to be as widely spread. And I just, it's frustrating to see Vegas make these mistakes because somebody like me wants to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's not as, I guess, sophisticated as a lot of people would think. Putting out the numbers, it's really just a handful of guys put together their numbers, and then they throw it out there. And if one of them doesn't catch it, then all the other sports books kind of copy off of each other, so then everybody is making the mistake. It's kind of a funny thing here in the betting the openers, and it kind of trickles over to FCS football as well. But guys, yeah, he's 14-6 in all games, including an FCS, and he'll have one up for this weekend, and you can get it for a discount here with the coupon code for the podcast, MMM29. Will give you his 3-day all-access package. Every sport, every play, mid-major Matt releases for less than $30. MMM29 at checkout for his 3-day all-access at sportsmemo.com. We got AAC action again. Tulsa at Cincinnati up next. Mid-major Matt, 17.5. That's the Bearcats laying a nipper, 47.5 the total.
Let me tell you, I love the rotation numbers you gave me this week because obviously a lot of these conferences are right up my alley. Cincinnati this year, plus 6 in the turnover margin. They rank 11th nationally in red zone defense. Opponents are having just a 68.2% success rate inside the red zone against them. Tulsa ranks 108th against the run. That means you're going to get plenty of Michael Warren. Let's just say you play some college football DFS and Cincinnati's on there. I would throw Michael Warren in there because he figures to have a big game. Tulsa has just 5 sacks and 1 interception so far this season. Normally in this situation, I'd look and see if there's a look-ahead factor. Cincinnati's got to bye the next week. So they're going to be focused and ready for this one. They're coming off the road win against Houston. They're trying to position themselves well in this AAC East race. Cincinnati's the better team by far. I'm not a huge Tulsa guy. They've had such a tough schedule. They come off getting blasted by Navy last week. Tulsa's not in a good spot right now.
Next up, we got ACC action. NC State at Boston College. Seeing the Wolfpack laying 3.5 on the highway, 51.5 the total, Matt.
No Anthony Brown for Boston College. That's huge at quarterback. Dennis Grosel, I'm guessing. Grosel is the backup quarterback. Threw 3 touchdowns last week against Louisville, but was 9 of 24 for 111 yards. The offense clearly is not going to be the same. A.J. Dillon's going to see some stacked boxes. NC State coming off the impressive win against Syracuse. Defensively, their offense was still brutal. The Bailey Hockman kid was not very good. He got very lucky on the first deep pass of the game that he threw. NC State's defense is very good. This might be an underplay here between these two teams because I don't know how Boston College is going to score. The thing is, NC State's offense has to work on some things because they're trying 3 different quarterbacks, and it seems like none of them are working. Also, weird things happen in Chestnut Hill every once in a while, so I wouldn't run to the window and take NC State either. This feels like one of those games where the road team's better, but Boston College hangs around and maybe they backdoor cover. So I think something on the total here, probably the under is the way I would go.
Big Ten action next, Matt. Purdue at Iowa. This one in Iowa City. 17.5 seems to be the prevailing number here. 48.5 the total. Got the Boilermakers and Hawkeyes looking into this one.
Purdue is, this won't be on my card most likely, but Purdue coming off that huge win over Maryland, 40-14. It was homecoming. It was highly emotional. They're still really a banged up football team, Purdue, so I'm not really ready to back them here. Iowa's averaged 1.89 yards per carry the last 3 games. Cole Barnwart's injury up front, he has been one of the guys in the offensive line that's been very important. His injury is not helping very much. Looks like Christian Welch is going to play. That's their big-time middle linebacker. Probably not going to play this game, but I feel like if I am, I'm certainly not looking in Purdue's direction.
We got Kent State at Ohio in some action here. Noon kickoff Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 61.5 the total. Looks like 7.5 is what Ohio is laying in Athens.
Ohio's problem has not been on offense. The offense looked really good. Nathan Rourke was very good last week against NIU, a defense that, NIU's defense is not as good as it has been in the past, but to see what they were able to do in crucial time against Ohio was big. And you got a Kent State team with Dustin Crum, who's completing 72% of his passes. It's ironic because we all thought that Woody Barrett was going to win that job and win it and keep it the whole season. But right now, Dustin Crum is their starting quarterback. Small lean to Kent State, but I like to say as we do these podcasts here, you don't have to play every game. I give you facts, I give you information, I give you leans, but doesn't mean I'm going to play all of these games because certainly I don't have the bankroll to play all 62 games, but we're here in the information business, and that's just a couple of facts that's involved in this Kent State-Ohio game.
Get them on the right side, give out information. That's what the podcast is all about, and heck, we have 2 advantages as sports bettors. What to bet and how much to bet, so you don't have to bet every game. We got the battle of the directional Michigan schools up next, Matt. We got Western Michigan at Eastern Michigan, 61.5 the total, 8 in the hook. Western Michigan laying on the road.
Western Michigan's been impressive this year. It's funny. They've actually alternated wins and losses all year long, so technically if we were going off that highly sophisticated angle, they're due for a loss in this one. But I watched the Eastern Michigan game last week. I had Eastern Michigan. I thought the spot was right for them to beat Ball State. Eastern Michigan is a sad team this year. Glass, the quarterback's pretty good. They don't have much of a run game. The defense has been a letdown so far. They've only played 2 home games so far this year. This is only their 3rd home game of the season. They were impressive at Illinois. They barely beat Central Connecticut State for one of their wins. I'm not a huge fan of this Eastern Michigan team, but Western Michigan has been so schizophrenic at times this year that I can't certainly tell anybody to take Western Michigan on the road. Maybe a play on the total. There could be a lot of points in this one, but once again, you're asking a semi-anemic Eagles offense to add to that total there.
What about the field there at EMU, the gray field? Is that one of your favorites, Matt?
It's gray on top of gray on top of gray. It's really odd because the first time you watch it, you're like, is there something wrong with my TV? And then you go up and you beat the TV and you're like, nope, there's actually not. And it's just another team trying to figure a way to become more popular amongst everybody else.
Just become a talking point, maybe helping with recruiting. We got Big 12 up next, Kansas at Texas. Longhorns laying 21 in Austin, 62.5 the total, Matt.
Well, this is going to be an angry Texas team. Because they're coming off the loss against the rival. They are playing at TCU, so I can't see any sort of look ahead here. I went back and looked the last couple of years, as to what they did after the Oklahoma game. Last year, they they beat Baylor 23-17 at home as a 14-point favorite. Clearly didn't cover the number there. The year in 2017, they lost at 13-10 at home against Oklahoma State. Did cover the number because they were a 7-point dog. And then going back one more year, 2016, they beat Iowa State 27-6 as a 14-point favorite. So you really don't know. There's no real constant trend there. But it's just something to consider after playing your rival. The over could be worth a look here because Texas could put up about 50 or so points themselves. I don't think they overlook Kansas. I think this could be one of those name your score type games where they just absolutely bludgeon the Jayhawks. Maybe a first half play or even a first quarter play. Texas gets the first couple drives. They go down the field. They score some touchdowns. This game gets out of hand early.
We got Big Ten action up next, Matt. Wisconsin at Illinois. I bet the Badgers off the open. Circa opened it here in Las Vegas. I missed, actually. Somebody beat me to it. I think I got it 30, Wisconsin. We're seeing 31s almost across the board now. 50.5 the total in Champaign. You interested in this Big Ten matchup?
Well, who knew that the hiring of Lovie Smith wasn't going to work out other than everyone outside of Illinois? Like, this has been ridiculous. They win their first two games. Granted, it was against Akron and UConn. And then they lost to Eastern Michigan and Nebraska at home. They lost to Michigan last week. They showed a pulse. They scored a bunch of points. It was 42-25. But, like, they just don't have the competition here. And they don't have the horses. You know, the Peters kid, I don't know necessarily if he's going to play. The one thing I'm concerned about here for Wisconsin, and I'm sure you took this into account, you look at the schedule next week at Ohio State, and that's a huge game for Wisconsin. As we said, people are tired of hearing, I'm never going to lay that many points on the road. Doesn't mean that I'm admonishing you or anything. This could be a first-half play. Wisconsin gets out fast. You know, Taylor's got to get his Heisman status continuing on. I could look into a first half here because Wisconsin in the first half has been absolutely steamrolling teams, it feels like.
Matt, you bring up Lovie Smith not working out. Why do you think, when we start talking about, ex-NFL coaches taking college football jobs, why do you think, so far, he hasn't really worked out, and then somebody like Herm Edwards has? Do you see a difference there?
Well, I mean, you watch Herm Edwards on TV. That certainly helps him. You look at Lovie Smith. He looks like a guy with the white hair, beard, and stuff like that. Like, I can't imagine Lovie Smith coming into my living room and selling me on Illinois. A, their football program stinks, and B, he doesn't have the enthusiasm of a Herm Edwards. He doesn't have the creativity of a Herm Edwards. Now, I've never been in the living room with him, and I've never heard him actually talk other than press conferences. But, like, what is Lovie Smith going to do? And who is in his staff that's going to make kids want to go to Illinois? It's a tough place to have anybody go. That's why you probably need to have, like, a young hotshot assistant who's trying to find his first job or second job even in the Big Ten, the guy who's going to be really excited to go into your living room. I don't see that from Lovie Smith. I feel like he's a guy collecting a paycheck and then just, looking to bide his time until retirement.
Yeah, the old retread NFL hire. More times than not, it doesn't work out, but it's just interesting to think the times that it does. We got Nevada at Utah State up next. Aggies laying 21 in Logan, 59.5 the total.
Well, I can see why. Utah State is coming off the 42-6 loss to LSU. They are going, and they had a bye week, so they had 2 weeks to hear about how awful they were. They had 2 weeks to hear, you're not that good and everything. And we know how good Jordan Love is as a quarterback. They should be able to win this game. This could also be a first half type play. It's funny as the years started to go on. I've started to look at some of these first halves, and I even played my first quarter, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, because, it was Notre Dame Bowling Green. I played Notre Dame in the first quarter because I was like, well, now, wait a second. Bowling Green's not going to be able to stop Notre Dame. They actually went 3 and out the first drive, and then Notre Dame scored the next 2 drives, and I got the cover. But there's nothing wrong with shortening the game. Much like all the first 5 inning bets that we see in baseball, you shorten these bets, and then you don't have to worry about it. You're in for a quarter, you're in for a half, and then you're out. You look at Nevada, they're coming off a 41-38 win against San Jose State. They won at UTEP, but they got blasted at Oregon. We know the story about Malik Henry, the last chance U kid at quarterback. I think I might get in this game in the first half or in the first quarter, get in and get out because I think Utah State wins, but they also could name their score here.
Well, and you bring up the new quarterback, finding change, said it many times, one of the best ways, if not the best way in sports betting to win. Is it enough of a change here at the quarterback position to make the Wolfpack? Do you circle them as a bet on going forward, Matt?
I'd have to watch another game. I mean, it's funny because a lot of obviously colleges have more sophisticated equipment when it comes to finding video. But like if I or you wanted to watch video, we had to go watch Last Chance U to see what this kid did. He was briefly, Florida State he was briefly in or whatever it was. So once they get a little bit of tape on this guy, it's not like Nevada has trying to think of some of the past guys, like, when they had Vi Tua, or they had some guys that were pretty good at running back or wide receiver to keep people honest. Once they figure this kid out, I think they're going to figure out the Nevada offense.
Okay, good point there. We got Boise State at BYU. We got the Broncos laying 7 on the road here, 47 the total.
Well, once again, quarterbacks. Is Bachmeier playing for Boise State? We don't know. Him and Cord are a little bit different in terms of quarterbacks. So we really don't know who the signal caller is going to be there. We certainly don't know the signal caller at BYU. I think I saw that they're on their 11th quarterback so far this decade or something like that. The kid that they had last week got a concussion. We don't know if he's going to play. A lot of question marks here. This is one of those games where I would wait until Friday or Saturday, start reading in between the lines when it comes to the press conferences and seeing who's getting snaps in practice. BYU could be a live dog. They've been a mixed bag at home. They beat USC at home. They lost to Utah at home. They lost to Washington at home. This is one of those things that if you want to bet it, I would wait and see who's the quarterback, because you could determine that way which direction you want to go based on who's going to play. If it's Bachmeier, if it's Cord, if it's whoever at BYU. I think they're running out of candidates at BYU because they've got to be on their third or fourth quarterback as it is.
Yeah. Good stuff there, Matt. We got New Mexico up next at Wyoming, seeing 48.5 the total. The Cowboys from Laramie, Wyoming, laying 19.5 now. What do you think? This fade the Lobos train, does it continue?
See, I'm on the fade Wyoming train as the season's going on. Unfortunately, so last week I was trying to determine whether or not I wanted to take the San Diego State in the first half of the game. Unfortunately, I took them in the first half. We know what happened. They had a really slow first half. They came back in the third quarter. They had a great third quarter, and then they ended up covering. I believe the number was around 3.5. They won by 4. This Wyoming team's a huge fraud. The Chambers kid is getting better at quarterback, but all they do is run it. He can't throw it. He's very mobile, so that's good, but I don't believe in this Wyoming team. The question is, can I believe in a New Mexico team the last couple weeks who have lost to Liberty by 17-10 on the road, at San Jose State 32-21, and then they lost at home to Colorado State 35-21. I really want to fade Wyoming. I've got to dig more into this matchup to see if New Mexico has any sort of edges. The thing you could consider is if both teams run the ball a lot and run-based offenses, you could see the under here potentially, because you're not going to see a ton of possessions a la the Academy game. So I got to dig more into this matchup. I really want to fade Wyoming, but does New Mexico have any redeeming qualities that make me want to do it?
Matt, I know this next game isn't necessarily up your alley, but it's 2 top 20 programs, a good one in the Pac-12 South here. Arizona State at Utah. Talking about Herm Edwards, here he is, and heck, I would make the argument this is the best coach in the Pac-12 versus the second best head coach in the Pac-12. I know you can kind of make an argument for a few guys, not that it's a pretty well-coached conference overall. We got 45 being the total, seeing 13 to 13.5. That's the Utes laying in Salt Lake.
So we're approaching at that total of 45. One of the rules that I've always believed in, and I've heard a lot in this industry, is when the total's low and the number's high, you got to back the underdog, because in a situation like that with 13 and 45, that Vegas is predicting that there's not going to be a ton of points, but most of them are going to come from Utah. The question is, how is Arizona State going to score? Utah has held teams to 12, 13-0, 30, 13-7. So the Jaden Daniels kid's been really good for Arizona State. That's been a huge surprise considering what they had last year at quarterback. He has held his own at quarterback. I do like Herm Edwards in this situation. The only way I would play it if I'm going to is potentially looking at the dog, because low total, high spread. If Arizona State can figure out a way to score on Utah, then this is one of those things where, like, all you need is 10 points, maybe 14, and in theory they should be able to cover this number. That's probably the only way I'll go if I play this game.
Mid-major, Matt, we got Maction up next. Toledo, the Rockets at the Ball State here. Pick 'em, -1. That's Toledo laying on the road, depending where you're shopping. 58 the total.
Well, in theory, Toledo's going to be really angry after that. They let one slip away against Bowling Green. I'm really angry because I had the under for Bowling Green season win total, and it's 3, and now they're at 2. They've got 1 or 2 more easy games left. So I'm really not happy with Toledo basically trying to give me a push, because it wasn't even 3.5. It's only 3 straight up. Toledo is going to be angry. They should be able to name their score, but we thought they were going to name their score against Bowling Green, and they didn't do it. Ball State's one of those teams like, look, they've got a really good passing attack. The Riley Miller kid at wide receiver, Drew Plitt has been good at quarterback. They've got a ton of weapons. This feels like a shootout back and forth. If Toledo's still at all hung over after a game like that, Ball State could be a live one in this one, but to me, the only way to play it, if you're going to play it, is the over and just hope that Toledo's offense figures out what went wrong last week, and these two teams just go back and forth ping-pong style.
All right, Mid-Major Matt, we got one game left, and guys, check out his packages at sportsmemo.com. He's 14-6 in games involving an FCS school. He knows the small conferences, the FCS level, as good as anybody in the industry. Check out his packages at sportsmemo.com. You can get full season, or we got a special going right now. Try him out 3-day all access for under $30, less than $10 a day, using the coupon code MMM29 at checkout for his 3-day all access. Sportsmemo.com, coupon code MMM29 at checkout. Northern Illinois at Miami, Ohio up next. Looks like the Huskies laying 2.5 in Miami of Ohio. 48 the total here, Matt.
Northern Illinois coming off the huge win at Ohio. I mean, I was very impressed. Look, Northern Illinois' offense has been dreadful so far this year. The Ross Bowers kid comes over from Cal. He was supposed to have brought a new dimension that this offense hadn't had in the past, and they scored 39 points. The surprising part also was the fact that they gave up 36 to Ohio. Now, granted, as I mentioned earlier, in the Ohio part, Nathan Rourke played a really good game. The Redhawks are an interesting team, and one of these teams I can't really figure out from time to time. They're 2-4. But they hung around with Cincinnati for a half. Granted, they got blasted by Ohio State 76-5. They beat Buffalo at home, which I don't think a lot of people realized. They just lost by 22 at Western Michigan. Second straight road game for Northern Illinois. They've played 5 of their last 6 on the road. So normally I'd run to the window. I'd take Northern Illinois and say, thank you very much. This is a gift number. But you have to wonder, since September 7th, they played at Nebraska, at Utah, at Nebraska, bye week, at Vanderbilt, home Ball State, at Ohio, and now they're back in Ohio playing Miami of Ohio. I'm kind of worried about the travel here, so therefore I'm not as reticent to want to take Northern Illinois in a game that they're clearly the better team.
Interesting stuff, Matt. Good breakdown here on Section 2 of the Every Game on the Board podcast. We'll have Robbie Vino up next. Matt, anything else you want to throw out before we shut this segment down?
No, certainly, as you mentioned, the FCS record has been really good. I'm definitely going to be on some FCS games this weekend. There are some interesting lines in the FCS that I'm definitely going to attack. We're going to post the packages up probably Thursday or Friday. And certainly the one warning is just make sure your book has them before you purchase them, because not every book has the FCS lines, and certainly they'll have them up by Saturday. Just giving a warning here that if you want them, make sure your book has them before you go and buy the package.
Absolutely, man. And any tidbits here on guys wanting to kind of jump into the FCS market? Do you notice anything different in betting FCS football than, say, Division I FBS football?
No, not really. The only thing I'll say is there are a lot of big numbers because there's a lot of talent disparities. North Dakota State is that much better than a lot of the teams they play. JMU is that much better than a lot of the teams they play. The thing I recommend is stick to your area. So, like, for me, I'm in Virginia, so I do the CAA because I watch a lot of those games. I do, Liberty was FCS, now they're FBS. I look occasionally at VMI. They're playing really good this year. So, like, if you want to do it, do your area. So the guys who watch us from Illinois, there's a ton of them, Illinois State, Southern Illinois and stuff like that. Just stick to your area. And then once you start figuring that out, maybe you branch out a little bit more. You look at the conference these schools are in. So, start small and then dig out. And certainly don't feel like you have to do the whole FCS. I don't do the whole FCS. I only look about 5 or 6 games a week. And then, I stay in my lane. That's the key for gambling. Stay in your lane. And that's kind of what it is.
Absolutely. It's this is a business where it's better to know a lot about a little than know a little about a lot. And that will definitely help with the winners. He's Mid-Major Matt. Follow him on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Check out his packages at sportsmemo.com and the coupon code MMM29 at checkout for his 3-day all access, less than $10 a day. Sportsmemo.com. Guys, we'll be right back with Robbie Vino breaking down section number 3, college football, Every Game on the Board podcast.